I'm Lila, and I'm horizontal.
And I am Dr. HazelGrace, and I am horizontal with Lila.
And a few birds.
Sex positive culture.
It's my body to give.
Are threesome gifts a thing?
Taking a bra off.
I like your bed.
Horizontal.
This is Horizontal with Lila.
Horizontal is the podcast about intimacy that's entirely recorded while lying down. Many episodes are recorded in bed at my home, Hacienda Villa, a sex-positive intentional community in Bushwick, Brooklyn. This particular episode, however, was recorded in a twin bed. So I've never recorded in a twin bed before.
Cool. Happy to be your first.
Oh boy. That's gonna be cozy. On a squeaky little mattress at a summer camp in the wilds of New Jersey. Just before we unfurl into this episode, I want to tell you about a podcast I admire. Make America Relate Again is based on the premise that if we can communicate respectfully with people whose viewpoints frustrate, enrage, or sadden us, we can cultivate more compassion in this sorely divided country of ours. And if we stoke the fire of that compassion, we can work together to create positive change. Samia Mounts, the host, is a liberal Hillary Clinton voter, and she has recorded compassionate, respectful conversations about politics with women who voted for Donald Trump. Pretty much all the political conversations I hear between liberals and conservatives are acrimonious and combative. In fact, I just had one of those on Thursday, and I'm not proud of it. Samia manages to put the humanity back into politics. Her goal is to create greater mutual understanding. I find her to be brave in a way that I am lacking, and this has me tuning in. Subscribe to Make America Relate Again. You can do it now. And for Samia's incredibly detailed and fact-checked show notes, head to makeamericarelatepodcast.com. And now for Horizontal. In this episode of Horizontal, I lie down with HazelGrace Yates. HazelGrace is a clinical sexologist, a scholar, and the founder of the Cock Project and the Pussy Project. She holds a PhD in Human Sexuality and a master's in education. The Cock Project offers those who identify with having a cock the opportunity to speak about their experiences living with it and their feelings about it directly to a group of others who self-identify the same way, while being silently and compassionately witnessed by a group that does not identify with having a cock. The Pussy Project is the inverse. Right after we recorded this episode, I had the opportunity to experience both workshops. HazelGrace and I were taking part in Connection Camp, a summer camp for adults that's centered around activities designed to encourage authentic relating. It's produced by the Connection Movement, which is based in New York City and led by Amy Silverman. More info on that in the show notes. I felt extremely moved by my experience at the Cock Project. Even though I live in a community in which we generally feel comfortable to speak openly about bodies and sex, I had never before even heard one cock owner speak in detail and at length about their experience with their cock. Certainly not more than an anecdote or two from a lover, definitely not to or in front of other cock owners, and decidedly not while witnessed by those who identify with having a pussy. I felt such admiration for their willingness to share, and I felt a kinship with their expressions of embarrassment, confusion, wonder, disappointment, and joy. I also felt a greater surge in my compassion for the challenges of growing up with an assigned male gender, as many of the feelings they expressed were inextricably intertwined with societal expectations of cock owners. I'll be inviting HazelGrace to Hacienda Studio to give workshops. You can contact her if you'd like the Cock Project and the Pussy Project to come to your town by visiting HazelGraceYates.com. Hazel, Hazel, Grace, Grace, and Yates, Yates, HazelGraceYates.com. In the first half of this episode, we talk about hugging our parents, touch deprivation, how intention changes the timbre of the way we touch, the human car wash, and non-sexual naked coconut oil contact improv movement, also known as the Coco Jam. So, dear, come lie down with us. Actually, maybe you can go in.
Yeah. I can go in.
Okay. Okay. So, Hazel Grace,
Yes.
I'm hoping that we'll pick up the birds.
Yeah. That'll be lovely.
They're horizontal, right? They just live horizontal. So we're in a really tiny wooden loft. Not a loft bed. We're in a tiny wooden bunk bed at Camp Luema, which is in New Jersey. They have no idea that we are doing this here. The staff will never know. And we're looking up at the chicken scratch of children. One says, wait, that one says Princeton. Hannah S. Princeton 2011. Okay, so maybe they're not all children. Sasha Harvard 2010. Okay, I thought it was children, but apparently college students are writing their names in marker on the undersides of bunk beds. And there are birds outside, and we're skipping out on some camp activities to be horizontal together.
Yeah, and even to prove that I'm at camp, I have allergies that I want to name that I'm sniffling and I might sneeze a few times.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for letting me say that.
They know now.
They know now.
Hazel Grace, what did you learn about cocks and pussies as a child?
I learned next to nothing. And it was in the nothing that I learned a lot. And that a lot was that whatever it was, the cocks and the pussies, which I didn't even have a name for was bad and wrong, and you don't talk about it. And like the only thing I remember my mom telling me when I was in 6th grade, I was wearing a sundress, and she said, "You look like a slut without pantyhose." I was just so confused. I mean, I might not even known what slut was, and even if I did, I was like the furthest thing from it.
But the word itself didn't sound very good, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was just confusing, and I felt really bad. And grew up in Texas. I guess pantyhose back then in the 80s were important to not look like a slut, apparently.
It was just that you weren't wearing stockings. You had underwear on.
Yeah, I'm quite certain I had underwear on. Panties.
Right. Panties.
Yeah, and
I can't help noticing that there is a little penis drawn over here.
oh my God, there totally is.
Yeah, and it has little hairy balls, and it's on the left. It's not up in the bottom of the bunk. It's on the wall, and it seems to be smeared in blood or lipstick.
Pink lipstick, maybe? Yeah.
Please proceed.
Okay, please proceed. That's all I remember. There was no conversation.
So you had no sex talk. You had
None.
no, this is your...
It was my TT hole.
Okay.
It was my TT hole, and I was 29 when my mother died, and we had never had a conversation about sex, ever.
Wow. Did she think that you would just figure it out or learn it at school? Or you didn't have sex ed. You were in Texas.
Our sex ed was like, what the hell was it? It was like, all I remember is in 5th grade, I remember they gave us pads, and I remember them telling us how to manage our periods. And I kept on to that starter pack, which was like 3 pads or something. And I held on to it until I was 16 when I started my period. And I used my starter pack. And my dad was out of town, or my mom was out of town when I started my period. And I found out that my dad looked into the trash because he was always worried that we would throw things out that were useful. So he found my pad in the trash and told my mom, and I was mortified when my mom came back, and she said, I found out that you started your period from Dad. It was just mortifying. And like, even then, I don't remember her like coaching me or telling me about my menstruation or like how to handle it and such. So it was...
Was she accusatory? Like, I found out from Dad, you should have told me, or something like that?
No, it was just like not worth having a conversation, I guess.
But she brought it up.
She did. It's like so vague. I don't remember. I just don't remember her. And at that point I was 16, so I was like one of the last ones to start my period. So I kind of knew what to do, but I still feel a little bit of grief of like not having some sort of rite of passage or having some sort of celebration or appreciation or understanding. And school certainly didn't provide that.
Of course not.
And so that was 5th grade, and I think maybe in like 8th grade, I remember them talking something about condoms. Like that's all I got. I don't remember really much.
Yeah. And then, what was your parents' relationship like?
My parents, they loved each other, and they were such good friends. They were such a good team, and they were like an impenetrable wall of togetherness, which was really beautiful. They were a good couple and a good team. And I can remember when my mom was on her deathbed, and my dad was holding her hand, and she said, "I'm just sorry I won't be there to help take care of you." And they were just such a good team. And I never talked to them about this, but I have no idea what their sex life was like. They were not affectionate with one another, and they were not touchy. And so like, I don't know what that area of their life was. I just can't imagine it was a robust sex life.
I can't remember my parents touching either, but my mother is Brazilian and very, very affectionate. And so throughout my life, I've disappointed her by not wanting to be as affectionate with her. Certainly as I wanted to be with my friends, or, a boy I had a crush on or something. And I still struggle with, I think this last trip I took down, I gave her the first hug that I really felt the impulse to give her, that I can recall, rather than an embrace that I felt obligated to, because I knew that she wanted. And of course it doesn't feel as good if it's given in that manner, right? And my dad always hugs me when I see him and is really loving, but I think my theory is that my mom always wanted more from him, more energy, more attention, more affection, probably even more sex than he was willing to offer her, for probably several reasons. He probably had just a lower need. He also worked full-time as a child psychologist in the New York City school system, and I imagine he was very drained when he got home. And when he got home, he wanted something for himself, so he would go into his wood shop in the garage, and he would work in the garage. And so my mom she was almost imported, right, from Brazil, and she was living on Long Island, and for a while she didn't have she didn't have friends, she didn't have companionship, and so she'd be alone all day, and then, he would come home, and then he wouldn't be with her. And so this is what I pieced together after all this time, and it's interesting that my dad is still resentful of her. He still calls her, and I asked him a couple times ago, please don't say that. It hurts me every time you say it. He calls her greedy. Oh. But your mom's so greedy. She's so greedy. And I thought, I don't think she's greedy, Dad. I think she is broken. And in need, And so I can't remember, but I also I have huge swaths of my memory that are blank before the age of 12, which is when they got divorced. So I don't remember them hugging or kissing in front of me or touching, but I wonder if that's because my dad just wasn't that affectionate with her in general. But I don't think they were a good team. It didn't look that good. It looked contentious and fractious.
Yeah.
Do you think that seeing your parents have this sort of sportsmanship together, you have looked for that in a relationship?
Oh, yeah, I totally aspire to create that which my parents had from what I could see. And, of course, the ingredient and the element that I would want there is a beautiful, full sexual relationship as well.
Yeah.
And, my parents were very affectionate with us as children. I almost feel like they channeled their affection towards us as opposed towards one another. So I grew up very affectionate with my parents. I just don't remember seeing them being affectionate with one another.
Oh, that's so interesting. Did you sit in their laps?
Oh, yeah, we were very, cuddly, and I was constantly touched by both of them in a nourishing, parental, sweet way.
Oh, so healthy.
Yeah, and then the interesting thing, which I still feel sad about, which is at some point when I became a young teenager, my dad was a coach for me in almost all of my sports, and he was such a good coach and good dad, and was very affectionate and playful, and I don't remember this, but apparently he told me later in my life that I had made a comment like, Dad, you're not allowed to touch my friends or something. I don't remember saying this. He remembers me saying this, and it makes sense to me because I remember there almost being this moment where my dad stopped touching me. And when I say touching me, I just mean hugging and being cuddly and being able to curl up in his lap. And even now, when he hugs me, it's this cold, we can't maintain it long, and he kind of pulls back. And so I just miss that affectionate, sweet touch that I had with him. And I'm working on it with him to hold longer, and I might just ask for it, even if it's uncomfortable. Dad, will you just hold this hug with me and just breathe? And the story that I make up about that is that he's culturally, he's just so afraid, I think, of being misinterpreted as being inappropriate with
Yeah.
his touch. And he's so not. He's such a kind, loving, respectful man that's never touched anyone inappropriately. And he would never do that. But it's this like culture thing that I imagine is holding him back for the fear of being judged or seen or misunderstood as something other than his loving being.
I remember my dad and I think I was a teenager. We traveled someplace. And I think we were in the same hotel room. And I said, get under the covers. I don't know. I wasn't a teenager. I must have been younger. I must have been younger. I think, yeah, I was probably a preteen. And I said, get under the covers. And he said, no, I can't. I can't get under the covers with you. And I didn't understand. But as a child psychologist, right? I think he was just so wary.
I just feel sad. I feel sad that our wounds and our unhealthiness around sexuality or our fears of being viewed as pedophiles or inappropriate or something has us hold back our love through affection, through innocent affection.
I wish that there were intimacy education. I wish that children and adults were taught how to be intimate and how to be respectful and how to ask. Not just consent. Consent doesn't do it. It has to teach people how to pause and feel into themselves about what they want.
Yeah, what they want, their desires.
What feels good, what feels right at the moment, and then has to teach them that it shifts. So they need to have that dialogue with themselves, that dialogue is continuous.
Which happens when we are able to slow things down.
Yes. And also I wanted to teach people about non-sexual touch, about sensual as opposed to sexual, about how to be affectionate in an array of different relationships. You know, even how like a hand on the shoulder can be so intimate and sweet. And
It actually reminds me, this is actually something that I do teach. I have a workshop this reminds me of. It's called, it really is called this. It's called Non-Sexual Naked Coconut Oil Contact Improv Movement.
that's a really long title.
Well, it's shortened. Coco Jam is the shortened version, but the long title is important because all of the factors are there.
Yes.
And what I love about this work, well, there's a lot of things I love about this workshop, but what I love about this workshop is when I tell people about it, they say, oh, there's no way it could be non-sexual. There's no way adults could be naked in coconut oil and sliding on one another and it not be sexual.
Not be sexual or not be aroused.
Well, they say not be sexual. And what I found, and having done this many times, is that when we all step into a space and we have an intention and an agreement, and there's really clear boundaries and guidelines, and we're all collectively saying yes to this non-sexual, fascinating thing is arousal doesn't even occur often. And the distinguishing factor between arousal and sexual is arousal. I let people know arousal's welcome here. This is a natural sensation. But sexual would be you moving, having an action connected with that arousal, or a directive action
Or an ask, yeah.
or an ask. And anyway, the fun part about this workshop is that it actually is this space for us to have affection and touch, even naked.
Yeah.
That isn't about sex and sexuality, and
I love it.
it taps us into this child playful innocence. People often say I felt like my 2-year-old self, and I got to reconnect with their little inner being, their child self. It's so beautiful.
Last year at Connection Camp, I taught an Art of Touch workshop. And at first, I did some Thai massage in a round robin. And then I thought of names for all the different ways in which I really love to be touched. You know, like salt sprinkling hair and shampooing the scalp and featherlight fingertips and taught those in a round robin, and then concluded the workshop by having people call this all kind. I'm sure you've done it before. People call it all kinds of things. I call it the touch gauntlet, where you have 2 lines of people facing each other, right? And one person walks through. And I've seen Kenneth teach it a few times, and I've done it in another scenario as well. And he often uses it to teach consent. And I decided to use it to teach intent. And so at the front...
I get excited about that. Keep going.
The person at the front end stood and proclaimed, "You are invited to touch this, and this. You're invited to touch my hair and my arms with sexual intent. Or you are invited to touch me all over with sensual intent." And the room shifted. So people, I think, who had not been able to make a distinction before could feel it, could feel the respect and a gentle distance, not a cold distance, like a warm distance in the sensual or affectionate touch. And then the pulsing or the heat, the throbbing of the sexual intent, right? And I thought it was also very interesting when people proclaimed, you can touch me in these not usually considered sexual places, right? Not non-erogenous, technically erogenous zone places with sexual intent. Or you can touch me all over. You can touch my genitals. You can touch my lips with sensual intent. And it was so interesting. And so what I was saying is, and I thought about, I never did the visual, but I thought about working with a graphic designer because I was trying to expand people's touch palette. I was trying to say, here is a palette. You probably use this corner of the palette when you touch people. There's a whole array of other hues out there. And I wanted to associate each of these kinds of touch with a color and a hue, maybe a sound, maybe a scent. Maybe it would be fully sensual, involving all the senses. And then they can experiment with the colors of the palette. And then layered over that is, when you go to buy paint, you can buy glossy or matte or what are other kinds? You can buy reflective, you can buy, all these different kinds of paint.
I trust you. I don't buy paint, but I trust you.
Okay. And so that layered over it is the intention. The color will look different. My shampooing of your head will look different whether I am trying to arouse you or whether I am trying to soothe you or whether I'm trying to heal you.
Or wash me.
Or wash you. Exactly.
Yeah. I'm having I think, a profound breakthrough here. There's something about consent is a huge topic in my communities right now, and what I'm cluing into, which is consent is not always black and white. there's a murky gray that actually I think takes up majority of what consent is. And I've been wanting to teach more consent classes beyond the explicit, did they say yes or did they say no? And I'm getting the gray is actually, I think, the intent, like that whole big chunk in the middle is huge. What is the intention? And are we making that intention explicit?
Right. And does that person want that intention from you? Or would they accept from you the same kind of touch or what you want to offer them with a different intent? And could you offer that different intent? Or can you be honest about the fact that you can't? Right? If somebody that I'm desperately attracted to says, can you stroke my buttocks, with the intent to heal me or something? Maybe I am not capable of doing that in that moment. Maybe I could only do that with sexual erotic intent, right? And then being able to be honest about that.
Oh, this is good. And it's interesting because I actually got this lesson many years ago at Burning Man, probably 8 years ago, but it's coming back full circle that I'm getting it kind of in a deeper way right now. Which there's this human car wash thing, human carcass at polyamorous camp, polycamp.
Right, I've heard of that.
So they have this car wash, and it's really cool. It's a human wash. And what's brilliant about this is you actually get really clean, which is hard to get clean out at Burning Man.
Right.
And they only use 4 or 5 tablespoons of water. And you have people spray you with water bottles, and you go to each station, and each station you get rinsed and then soapy and then squeegeed with the palms of their hands.
Wow.
And then they dry you with like blowing on you at the end. And at each station, you have 4 new humans, and at each station, you get to practice consent. You get to practice communicating what you want from the 4 people standing there.
Yeah.
And I remember one guy saying, and my mind was blown, because he said, I give you consent to touch me anywhere as long as your intention is to clean my body.
Yes. Yes, we applaud. Do you know this person? We applaud you.
Oh, we applaud you.
We applaud you.
Random person at Burning Man 8 years ago at Poly Paradise.
As long as your intention is to wash me.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
That's satisfying.
When Kenneth, I've done it twice when Kenneth has taught it. And
The gauntlet?
yeah. And I noticed the first time that I didn't want to be touched by everybody in that group. And I am not sure, actually, if I drew any boundaries the first time. And often what happens is until someone is the first, people don't draw boundaries. People don't make any. They do it and maybe they're uncomfortable, and the idea is to teach that you can opt out at any moment, you can turn and walk out, and he says that you can do that. But I think most people just I want to be a good sport, and so at this workshop, probably the second one that I went to, probably I would have been comfortable with half of those people touching me anywhere, and half of them I didn't really want to touch me at all. And I thought, okay, where can I be content? What could I ask for that would allow me to enjoy this experience? And I said it before, but I said, you are welcome to touch my hair and my arms, because I was comfortable with anybody in that room touching my hair or my arms. And I closed my eyes so that I didn't see who it was, so that my preference did not influence my experience of the sensation. And that was very good for me.
Yeah. It's beautiful. I want to do the gauntlet.
Yeah.
The touch gauntlet.
I wanted to do a huge one at the end of Connection Camp last year. It just didn't work out. So you taught 6 workshops here this camp?
Actually, I would say 5.
What were
3 of them were circling, and 1 actually will be the Cock Project after this podcast.
Tell me about the origin of your fascination with cocks, and tell me.
Yeah, I'll tell you all of it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and after I teach the Cock Project at camp, I'll teach the Pussy Project. But it all started with the Cock Project, so we'll
start there. At the very beginning, because it's a very good place to start.
Yeah. Well, the very good place to start is how I got interested in becoming a sex-positive professional. Mm-hmm. And I say that because I have 12 different titles depending on what I need, but sex-positive professional fits the bill for now. I was pretty clear that I was going to be teaching women around sexual empowerment because how I personally got into the field was I experienced sexual abuse from my first boyfriend when I was 16, and I did not discover my clitoris until I was 29 years old. Yeah.
The year that your mom died?
Yeah, it was something like, I can't remember. It was 28 and 29 is when I discovered my clit and when my mom died. I can't remember which order. It's all kind of running together at this point, but they're about the time. And good tracking, Lila. So Burning Man many years ago is when I experienced my sexual liberation and my sexual empowerment and my sexual healing. So I was clear that this was the work I was going to do in the world. I was going to help women. And then this conversation happened about 4 years ago when my friend was talking, my male friend was talking to me, and he was frustrated with orgasmic meditation. And he said, "What about the cock?" And I thought to myself, that's a really good question.
What about the cock?
What about your cock? And he kind of like pulled back and got a little frozen and defensive. And he said, "What do you mean? What about the cock?" And I said, "Well, you just said, what about your cock?" And it was in that moment when I saw something I'd never seen before. And I thought, wow, holy moly, we have neglected the men's side of the story.
In the sex-positive realm.
Yeah. And it was like my friend was unable to share anything about his cock. And I thought, how many other men out there haven't had a chance, an opportunity, an inquiry, a curiosity about what it's like to be you as a male sexual being with your cock?
Right, other than locker room talk and being like, yeah, hit her so hard.
Right. And that night we looked up, where is the vagina monologues for men? Where's the cock monologues? And we didn't find anything.
Monologues.
And so that moment was like, that's what I'm going to do.
And what year was that?
This was 4 years ago.
That's years and years and years and years after the vagina monologues came out.
Oh, this is 20 years after.
You would think that somebody would have done that.
Right?
Because I mean, it was such a cultural phenomenon.
I know.
And there were no cock monologues.
And there really still hasn't been. Well, kind of. I'll not go into that. So then I thought, okay, this is my mission. Here I go. I'm going to go do this thing called Create Cock Monologues. And that was my mission.
I have huge appetite.
The second half of this episode has been released separately by popular demand. If you'd like to become a patron of the Horizontal Arts, support me on Patreon, a website for crowdsourcing patronage. Having patrons allows artists like me to buy equipment, schedule cross-country and global tours, and devote my time to creating more and more horizontal goodness for you. Becoming my patron has delicious perks, ranging from exclusive photos and behind-the-scenes video content to handwritten postcards and I'll tell you that my handwriting is ridiculous. Spring cleaning, phone calls, and creative input on future episodes. You can become a patron for $1 a month on up, and the rewards just get more sumptuous. Patreon.com/Horizontal with Lila. That's patreon.com/Horizontal with Lila. Horizontal's theme music was created by Alan Markley. You can find his gorgeous blue eyes and rock star visage on Instagram as Plastic Cannons. My saucy cover art was designed and illustrated by Shauna Shea. Check out her gorgeous character illustrations on shaunashay.com, ShaNashay.com. Every episode is mixed and mastered by Owen Muir of Self-Disclosure Productions. Owen's own podcast, Self-Disclosure, in which people speak openly and often for the very first time about their experiences with mental health, is coming soon. Listen, if you are a person with feelings. For most things horizontal, head to horizontalwithlila.com and sign up for the mailing list. It's getting really exciting on Horizontal with Lila. There are detailed show notes with vocabulary words. There's a glossary and links to all sorts of informative articles and sexy guidance and sensual photos. And if you sign up, they'll be delivered right to your inbox. Thanks for listening. Hem, hem, hem.
And I'm going to say I'm Dr. HazelGrace.
Perfect.
Okay. And I'm Horizontal with Lila.
Yeah. This is the second time I've been in bed with a doctor.
Oh.